Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, this is Teners Human, and welcome to this battlefield strategy guide to Carthage in Rome Total War. We've already looked at the campaign strategy for Carthage, so it's very much time to look at the battlefield. Where are its armies strong, and where is it just a little bit limited? We're going to jump into battle and try and see what the best tactics are when taking on various foes such as Numidia and of course the Romans. And for those of you who love a bit of roleplay and want to be Hannibal taking on the Romans, well, fear not, the Rome Total War game mechanics are very much geared towards the battle tactics of Cannae. You can get yourself the double envelopment very easily with the Carthaginian armies, and indeed we're going to be using some of those historical tactics in order to beat the Romans here today. So let's get into the armies and have a deeper look. Straight away, a glaring weakness in the Carthaginian roster becomes apparent. They have absolutely no archers whatsoever. In terms of missile units, they are very weak indeed, with only basic slingers and basic skirmishers. Whilst you do have some heavy onagers, which is always lovely to have, it doesn't quite make up for archers at all. And yes, whilst elephants do technically have a few bows, they're hardly going to sit at the back and just pepper the enemy with the odd shot here or there. Now we want to get those guys getting much more into the action. With our missile units firing a blank, then we're going to have to make up for those shortcomings with our infantry and with our cavalry. Luckily for us though, the infantry is pretty darn solid. Both the Sacred Band and the Pioneer Infantry here can hold a phalanx, very good stamina and good morale. These guys will hold for a long time. The only thing is between these three units here is that you are only spearmen. Now, Beer and Infantry are way too basic. And to be honest, I'd probably use some Spanish mercenaries in the second line just to bolster it up, get you a little bit of light infantry that's more manoeuvrable and help with a bit of javelin support. It is of course the Carthaginian cavalry who are really going to dominate the battlefield for you. The round shields and the long shields are cheap and effective cavalry to be used in early game, and the Sacred Bands eventually are certainly elite cav that will be able to do the job. Of course though, the main things are over here, your trump cards, the elephants. You can cause so much disruption to the enemy lines. You can rip up armies to shreds with just these war elephants over here. The armoured elephants are absolutely insane. It is worth bearing in mind though, you need to keep your supply lines very organised for these guys. Obviously you can only train them in a few different regions. Overall then, Carthage has a fairly interesting little army with solid unspectacular spearmen ready to hold the line while your fantastic cavalry come and complete the pincer movement and completely annihilate your opponents. It's worth thinking though that these are very good mercenaries indeed, and if you want to go and roleplay as Carthage, your Numidian mercenaries were a key part of their army, as were these slingers and the Spanish mercenaries. You want to be using those in your roster to just round out the army a little, because it can at times be just a bit limited. So to have a little look at this, we're going to do it in two parts. We're going to look at the early army. I've got a kind of general early army here that we're going to look at, and indeed I've got myself a second section here where we're going to look at the slightly later game army. The early Carthaginian army, oh my days, it is not good, ladies and gentlemen. You are very much reliant on your cavalry, as you will be throughout your campaign, but later on your infantry will be able to hold. For now, it's not that good at all. Let's have a quick look at the Iberian infantry then. 7 attack, 2 charge bonus, 8 defense. Abilities, nothing. They exist, and more than anything else, you'll simply want them to be a basic line of distraction. They're not going to last forever, but they exist. Now, you do, of course, though, have access to Libyan Spearmen if you decide to build the barracks for it. Now, I would suggest you do want to get a few of these, because 16 defense, these guys are incredibly solid, especially for only, a level 3 city. And to be frank, level 3 cities are going to be very easy to come by as the Carthaginians. So these are a pretty solid line. They're not phalanxes, but they are solid spearmen. And because they're not phalanxes, you can get them manoeuvring around the battlefield a little bit more easily. I would suggest though, the main thing you're doing here is holding a line. As I said then, you only have some basic units when it comes to missiles. We have some slingers here. A little bit awkward because their range, if you look at it, isn't particularly good. So if they're going to charge in, you maybe get one shot and not a lot more than that. You might actually want to use these a little bit like in Medieval 2, where you get them around the side when you have the rest of your units pinned in battle. That might well be the best use for them as long as you protect them with your cav. The real problem though is, you don't have the archers of course, so the skirmishers can hide back here, throw in some javelins. I would suggest use the Spanish mercenaries to do this job though. Don't even bother with the skirmishers, get the Spanish mercenaries when you can hire them and put those behind your main line. They're good auxiliary infantry. Numidian cavalry are well renowned in the ancient world. Livy described them as the best horsemen in Africa. And if you try and chase them down, this is all that's going to happen. You're going to get your men slaughtered by their lovely, lovely javelins here as you try and chase them down. It's not worth your time. You need these cavalry to go and win you the battle. So I suggest you try and keep these guys as busy as possible. They are going to be the awkward part of taking on forces such as Numidia over here. But hopefully, by dominating the rest of the battle, you can try and actually deal with these guys. If you do manage to pull them into battle, then you can actually rout them. So if you can try and avoid their skirmishing and pull them into a proper conflict, you should be able to get rid of them. But it's a good example over here of, oh, I'll charge my elephants in. They're going to do a marvellous job. No, 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 they're not. Do not send elephants in by themselves. You're going to have all sorts of problems if you do that. They are just going to rout. You need to send these guys in with support. So let's try this again. This time, let's not leave our elephants alone to go and deal with all of their men. Let's go and organise this properly. If we take a closer look at the round shield cavalry, then you'll see it's 7, 4 and 10 defence. They're not too bad of a unit, especially as an early game unit. They are, of course, more disciplined than the barbarian counterparts. They're perfectly fine to be using in our battle here. Now, of course, as I said, if you can't trap these guys, you're probably better letting them come a little bit closer to you. Firstly, you can use your missiles against them, and secondly, you'll be able to go and try and entrap them by yourself. So what I'm trying to do over here is to kind of pull them slightly closer. Now my slingers are about to get stuck, no longer being able to do anything against this front line here. So it's probably a good time to start sending elephants into the flank. Yeah, you see, this is what we're on about. So start using your cavalry together as you would. Hammer and anvil, and that's fine. Those elephants don't want to be alone by themselves, because that is when you start having problems. So infantry can do their usual kind of engagement that you'd expect them to do, and they can all get on with that. Our general is now stuck in with the elephants, and to be honest, I'm quite happy with that. If he's with the elephants, he'll be quite happy to fight on. We've got ourselves the skirmishes. Honestly, I'm not too worried about the skirmishes. They can carry on doing what they're doing for the time being, and we're going to try and use the slingers to pull them into a position we want. That is one use, I think, of the slingers here, is to try and deal with all of the annoyance that is the Numidian cav. Now, obviously, if you do leave these elephants in forever, they might start to have a few problems, but actually, if they are happy enough in the middle of a pile of men, they can certainly hold up a lot of units. Do make sure, though, that you eventually decide to support them if my general ever wants to come and charge in, because actually we could do some very strong work of it. And see there, the Numidian cav have been very, very distracted by all of our lovely, lovely slingers, and that certainly is what we want to see from them. Yeah, they're lovely. So the elephants being supported, they've been able to clear them out now. Lovely stuff indeed. It's just this general that really we need to clear out. I think the general rule with these early battles with these guys is very much if you can keep the Numidian cavalry distracted and make sure you support your elephants with other cav, then you'll be absolutely fine. So that's really the main thing. Support those elephants, support them, and try not to get too distracted by the Numidian cav. Maybe use your slingers to just do a little bit of distraction and keep them busy. Now, of course, we know we can beat the Numidians with the early army, but what about the Romans? They are a bit of a different proposition. Of course, our Numidian foes could only really go head-to-head with our infantry. The Romans, though, will batter them up. So we need to find our own strengths, which, of course, is our cavalry, and that includes the elephants, of course. So what we want to do is get all of our cavalry out to the flanks, and that includes my general because he's the strongest cavalry that we have. Well, maybe the elephants. Let's have a quick look at the elephants while we discuss those, because they are 5 attack, 8 charge bonus, 12 defense with 10 hit points. They're not as good as you think they are. The higher tier ones really are amazing, but these ones aren't quite as ridiculous as you might imagine. Keep them supported or you'll have a lot of problems. Now, as they come forward, we obviously need to think very carefully about what we're doing. I've got a much tighter line than last time. I've got them really closely bunched together, and that's because I need them to just hold a position. I want to keep them around as high as possible. Assuming you can take out their cavalry nice and early, then you should hopefully be able to do the hammer and anvil trick the best you possibly can. Now, with them gone, I just let them get away at this point. I'd send my elephant straight into the back of the next unit. Get the general back around, though, to wherever your line is. You want him to be nice and near to get a good charge in the flank of these guys. So, they're obviously going to stop to throw a javelin at some point. You need to bear that in mind. General might actually get distracted by elephants, which is good if he does, because then you can pin him in with your own general. That very much works in our favour, which means we're going to start getting these guys to slam into them. So start charging these guys forward as soon as you are able to. I would say get the slingers out to a flank, do a bit of a medieval 2 style tactic, take them out that way. Elephants are charging around, we're taking out their general. Our general is quite exposed at this point, but you can see here, as we've started the little battle here, we've managed to clear out their infantry by using the hammer and anvil with the cavalry here. And I would say very quickly, get these guys back into position. They are there to hold a line, keep that line under all circumstances, ladies and gents. You do not want to get torn apart. In the mid-year, we can let things get a little bit hectic. I don't think we can afford that here. You probably find that you might get a little bit, if the general's done what he's done here and got pulled into the little elephant trap, then yeah, you might get yourself a little bit exposed. So we might get lucky. We have indeed got lucky. And with that, their general has gone. Actually, we've lost our elephants, but I would suggest the elephants have largely done their job here. They're not actually going completely mental, so slingers should be okay there. But yeah, we obviously did the slight concern that the elephants can always run amok. But they haven't on this occasion. That's all fine. They've done their job, which is to hold back several units from hitting our front line. And it's actually done the perfect thing of putting the general in, especially if you support him with a few more men. So this Hastati are currently a bit awkwardly placed. Honestly, these cav can just start to pull around into random units which are floating around the map. Possibly actually a good idea to get them back into that cavalry because they seem to be in position for that. In comes another sandwich, and the more you can split up their troops, the easier you'll find that this battle becomes. So cavalry there are doing their job. Don't get your cavalry stuck in with their infantry. Not a good plan. But to be honest with you, I think at this point we're going to be able to win this without too much fuss. The generals come to take on the elephants again, which is kind of funny. But lovely stuff. You can see here how just making sure we hold this line gives the Roman units something to look at and something to aim for. And that means that when your cavalry, as long as you don't forget they're there and get them killed, when your cavalry are around, you can then pull out more of the units. Because as a standard rule in this game, if you have cavalry out on the flanks, they'll send some men to go and deal with them. If they don't have any cavalry left to do it, they'll go and send some infantry. That means you can go and smash into their rear. You can see here we have almost entirely defeated their army, and that's because we were very sensible with our use of cavalry. In fact, our slingers are doing a very nice job of doing the medieval to stand on the flank whilst we pin them in tactic. Lovely stuff. At this point, looks like we've almost won. So, get out of our cavalry. They can hit the back of these guys as the infantry charge on forward. And yeah, their general is once again fleeing because he's a bit of a fool. So yeah, taking on the Scipiones, a little bit harder than taking on the Numidians for sure. But if you just make sure you hold that solid line, give the infantry something to aim for, and then make sure you use your cavalry. Micromanage that cavalry, you will be able to beat them. It is not a problem. These elephants are just that extra weapon that you need to win the battle. Let's start thinking about the mid to late game armies then, because you've got the Sacred Band and the Sacred Band Cavalry. Actually at 600 and 700 to recruit. They're not the most expensive in terms of top tier units. 2 turns of course, but incredibly strong and solid, good morale, good stamina, 25 defense. These guys are an absolute mainstay. If you have the time to build them, absolutely do. Well, that being said, Pointer Infantry at 11, 4, 20 and Phalanx are very solid indeed, and at one turn you're probably going to be getting those more often as a general mainstay of your army. But your elite armies with the Sacred Bands are going to be incredibly strong. Whilst the Sacred Band Cavalry are magnificent at 2 turns and at quite a high expense, you will often be going for the Long Shield Cavalry. These are a lovely upgrade on the Round Shield Cav, 10, 6, 15 and good morale. They are a great option for you to be using. They are incredibly fast moving, by the way. These will be able to chase down opposition generals with ease. And it's important to note, at 140 upkeep, they are incredibly cheap. 1 turn to go and get yourselves to train. And of course, if you go and get yourself the cavalry stables in Carthage on turn 1, like I suggested, you can get yourselves Long Shield by turn 4. And that is a quite ridiculous feat for what is a fairly strong unit. This is going to be key, along with the elephants of course, in taking out the Romans. Now I did say earlier that the basic elephants are fairly overrated, and to be honest, they're just a slow but slightly more tough version of a cavalry unit. But once you get up to these, the war elephants and the armoured war elephants, you are really going to see the lads that we know and love. You want to be using these guys, if not only because of their sheer power, because it's just hilarious, quite frankly. And they are pretty good in auto-resolve as well. I have myself a ridiculously elite army here. Obviously, no missile troops, but we can send these into auto-resolve. And even against all of those armies, it's just going to win. It is lovely stuff. We can crack in the city as well. It's stone walls, so we can't do that. But you'll find that it is surprisingly simple to start ploughing forward with these guys in auto-resolve. It is a lovely, lovely thing to just run around the map with these guys. But I tell you what, let's get into an actual battle with the later game army and see how we can actually fend off the Romans, and the post-Marian Romans at that. We obviously have ourselves a huge cavalry advantage. There are Roman cavalry here who are not going to last at all. The legionary cavalry are probably in the huge scrum with the elephants over here. Quite frankly, last time I said, oh, don't send them in by themselves. But this time I have. Actually, the pigs. Do be aware of pigs. They will automatically rout your elephants, but we've gone on to Berserk, which in the middle of their troops is quite funny, frankly. So, yeah, to be honest, this is a bit of a walkover right now because the elephants have torn them to shreds. Here comes the general. He's going to charge against phalanx, then he's not going to end very well. You know what? We can just use the cavalry to go and finish this guy off. That'll work for us. The elephants, to be honest, at this stage of the game are going to... Onagers. Helpful as ever. Yeah, the elephants at this point of the game are pretty much going to do most of the work for you. Of course, there's always the problem that they come over here. We're got to be wary of that, but they're fun. They're fun if nothing else. When the elephants do their thing, it can be a bit of a walkover. It's funny, but let's have a little look. Hold them back this time and see how things go instead, because we do want to see how we can hold our infantry against their line, and how we might actually use our cavalry to go and win the battle. In many ways this will go the same way as it did in the early parts of the game. You simply go and get yourself, well, not the Onagers to go and attack them obviously. If you just get your cavalry to take out their cavalry on both flanks like I'm doing, you'll find the rest of the battle is a simple case of hammer and anvil. But we'll see how that goes, because at the moment these guys are just dancing around us a little bit. You can see our cavalry is taking out their legionary cav without any real problems. And now they can come in and dance out of that forest into the back of their legionary cohort. And to be honest, while I said I wasn't really going to use the elephants, I haven't sent them straight into their line. But what I have done is obviously use them to go and, well, distract just a couple units. And that'll always be able to happen. Ploughing into the back of these guys with all your cav is always going to be incredibly powerful. And indeed, this line can just hold position whilst the rest of your units do their work. And to be frank, I think it's a lot easier to face the Romans post-Marian. I say post-Marian. When you've got your good units anyway, it's going to be a lot easier. A few things to be aware of in terms of your elephants, of course. A, you've got the pigs, and B, you've got the archers. Flaming missiles are not their friends, so you want to keep them away. But frankly, you'll probably find that your cavalry advantage is so big, as long as you make sure you have more cav than the Romans, you'll be able to destroy however much infantry they bring. Because frankly, cavalry is always king in Rome Total War. As my cavalry encircle their general then, we'll simply see, look, my infantry line has done nothing, my general has done nothing. And I barely actually used... Oof, good shot, Onager, good shot. Yeah, I barely even really used the elephants in this case. And they've taken on a couple units on the flank. But frankly, the job was done by my cavalry taking out their cav and then slamming in the back of their line. That's all I really needed to do. Now, obviously, when you're in a proper campaign, some of their generals might have fantastic morale bonuses. And that can make all the difference. But quite frankly, I don't think you're going to have too many problems as long as you use your cavalry advantages. It's just at the start of the game, you need to make sure that is a building that you really go for. So go through the game and get your elite troops, it should be easier. It's just that the early Carthaginian army is fairly limited and a bit one-dimensional. But as you can see here, this line will be solid, whether it's hit or not. And your cav is just so superior to theirs, you can just have a fun old field day slamming down Romans. Thank you for joining me for this Battlefield Strategy Guide to Carthage. Of course, I will be doing more of these videos in the coming weeks and months, so if you do have a particular faction you'd like me to look at, for both, of course, the campaign strategy and the battlefield strategy, do put it in the comments below. I know a few people have put some very nice comments on the previous video, and I think we were talking about Thrace, Greece, Pontus, so if you've got a different faction you really like me to have a look at, then do put it in the comments below. I do like to take that stuff into consideration. But for now, I will leave you. I'm Thomas, this is To Nerds to Human, and this has been our Battlefield Strategy Guide for Carthage. Thank you, and goodbye. Death and violence will come to you. This is a beautiful, beautiful town, by the way, guys. Let's go and smash it up. Dum tum ti 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 ti. How did you die? What is happening to my men? Steve! He was the one man who tried!